Riddance of Attachment to an Ego. When Sakyamuni Buddha put forth the notion of no self, he upsets many concepts about life. In the universe, he blasted our most firm and widespread conviction, that of a permanent self. Those who understand not self know that its function is to overthrow self, not to replace it with a new concept of reality. The notion of not self is a method, not a goal. If it becomes a concept, it must be destroyed along with all other concepts. The doctrine of no self has two main characteristics: selflessness of things, dharma nairatmya, and selflessness of person, pudgala nairatmya. Sometimes, the teaching of not self causes confusion and misunderstanding. Anytime we speak, we do say, "I am speaking," or "I am talking." How can we deny the reality of that I? Sincere Buddhists should always remember that the Buddha never asked us to reject the use of the name or term I. The Buddha himself still used a word tathagata to refer to himself. No matter what is the meaning of the word, it is still a word or a name. When the Buddha taught about not self, he stressed on the rejection of the idea that this name or term I stands for a substantial, permanent, and changeless reality. The Buddha said that the five aggregates form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness were not the self, and that the self was not to be found in them. The Buddha's rejection of the self is a rejection of the belief in a real, independent, permanent entity that is represented by the name or term I. For such a permanent entity would have to be independent, permanent, immutable, and impervious to change. But such a permanent entity or such a self is nowhere to be found. A Sanskrit term for no self, one of the three characteristics, trilaksana, that the Buddha said apply to all conditioned samskrita phenomena, the others being impermanence and unsatisfactoriness or suffering. The doctrine holds that, contrary to the assertions of the Brahmanical orthodoxy of the Buddha's time, there is no permanent, partless, substantial self or soul. The Brahmanical tradition taught that the essence of every individual is an eternal, unchanging essence called the Atman. The Buddha declared that such an essence is merely a conceptual construct, and that every individual is in fact composed of a constantly changing collection of aggregates, skandha. No self also means non-existence of a permanent self. The body consists of the five elements, and there is no self. Elements exist only by means of union of conditions. There is no eternal and unchangeable substance in them. The self and its possession, the main goal of Buddhism, is the extinction of separate individuality, which is brought about when we cease to identify anything with ourselves. From long habit it has become quite natural to us to think of our own experience in the term of I and mine, even when we are convinced that strictly speaking such words are too nebulous to be tenable and that their unthinking use leads to unhappiness in our daily lives. Even then do we go on using them. The reasons for this are manifold. One of them is that we see no alternative way of explaining our experiences to ourselves except by way of statements which include such words as I and mine. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, "These are my sons. This is my wealth. With such thought a fool is tormented. Verily, he is not even the owner of himself. Whence sons? Whence wealth? He who has no thought of I and mine, for whatever towards his mind and body he does not grieve, for that which he has not, he is indeed called a bhikshu." According to the Pudgala Veda sect, Pudgala is a Sanskrit term for personalist, a term applied to several early Indian Buddhist schools, which shared a common belief that there is a self pujala, which is the basis for karma, and transmigration, or the substance that is the bearer of the cycle of rebirth, and that this self is neither the same, nor different from the five aggregates. However, Buddhism denies the existence of such an eternal person or soul. Buddhism sees the person only a conventional name, or a combination of physical and psychological factors that change from moment to moment. The Pujala doctrine was eventually declared heretical in Buddhism, though at one time Pudgalavadins appear to have been quite numerous. If we carefully look into the Buddha's teachings, we will see that the Buddha always denies such a permanent and partless self. The teaching of Pujala caused such a violent reaction on the part of its opponents was that while the Anatman doctrine of the Buddha was entirely true in a conventional sense, there was still a Pujala, or person. This person is an ultimately real thing, the substratum which allows for continuity between rebirths, for memory, and for the future ripening of intentional actions, or karman, which are performed in the present or the past. If there was no person at all, as its opponents claimed, then Buddhism would be open to the charge of nihilism and immortality, for there would be nobody who could undertake moral actions. It insisted that the Pujala was indeterminate in relation to the skandhas, either outside them nor within them, neither identical with them, nor different from them. In fact, this Pujala was only perceptible to the Buddhas. In support of its position, it frequently quoted sayings of the Buddha such as, "Monks, there is a single person born into the world, for the welfare of many people, for the happiness of many people, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and men." One might see this kind of position reflected in the Tathagatagarbha doctrines of the Mahayana, the Chan and Tiantai schools in China. Thus, it is believed that this school was formed on the basis of a doctrinal division within the Stavravadin school in the 3rd century BC and survived until the 9th or 10th centuries AD. It originally called Vatsaputriya, after its teacher, Vatsaputra. It was later named the Samatiya, and give rise to several subsects of its own. In Buddhism, although the main purpose of meditation and contemplation is enlightenment, the immediate and important purpose of meditation and contemplation is the elimination of the self. Once the attachment of the self is eliminated, the ignorance will also automatically end. At that moment, the practitioner will gain the enlightenment, which the Honorable Buddha declared 26 centuries ago. All Buddhists have had one and the same aim, which is the extinction of self, the giving up the concept of a separate individuality, and all their practices have generally tended to foster such easily recognizable spiritual virtues as serenity, detachment, consideration, and tenderness for others. In the scriptures, the Dharma has been compared to a taste for direct feeling, not for learning and keeping. The golden word of the Buddha is there defined as that which has the taste of peace, the taste of emancipation, the taste of nirvana. It is, of course, a peculiarity of tastes that they are not easily described, and must elude those who refuse actually to taste them for themselves. Once we are able to eliminate the attachment of the self, our minds will completely purify, and we are able to know everything in the universe with wisdom. Once we are able to eliminate the attachment of the self, we are able to see all sentient beings' sufferings. Thus we are able to develop loving kindness toward all beings with great compassion. Thus, meditation and contemplation does not only help us purify our bodies and minds, but they also set us free from the long-term clinging of self. As a matter of fact, we Buddhist practitioners once get rid of attachment to the self also means that we push away great obstacles on our own path of cultivation. This is one of the most wonderful methods of letting go for practitioners.